Hello, protocols, packets, programs, and previews for the OWASP Global AppSec Summit. They're coming up in Washington, D.C. this November 3rd through 7th. And as part of the preview for this, we wanted to highlight some of the speakers and some of the great people that you'll be able to meet there. First up, we're going to talk with John Sotiropoulos. He's going to cover everything you ever would want to know about Agentic AI. And to preface a little bit, John, before I bring you in here, is that I want to say that, I think everybody knows agentic AI brings new challenges for AI security, let alone just normal AppSec security. And we're already seeing incidents around the world about this. So what we're hoping to hear, I think what we will hear from this session about what are the challenges that AppSec folks deal with and how is AppSec or how is OWASP going to help them? So it's part of that. First of all, hello, thanks for joining us. and, and glad to have you. And as a good preview, what's the OWASP Agentic AI initiative? Give us a little bit of an insight on that, what the project is.
Okay, so the Agentic Security Initiative is one of the initiatives of the OWASP Generative AI Security Project that brought out the top 10 for LLMs. We started during those discussions around top 10 for LLM. We realized actually that was happening and people were talking about it, and we needed, instead of a knee-jerk reaction, we needed to dive into it and study it and understand it and provide guidelines. And I initiated that. I co-leaded with the exceptional Mr. Ron Del Rosario from SAP. He's my co-lead. And the response was just phenomenal of people that we have a few hundreds of people now contributing, having a distinguished expert review board with people from NIST, from Camlis, from Oracle, from Microsoft, from AWS. And, it's the model that I call expert-backed, but community-led. So when things happen so fast, you really, really need to make sure you respond very fast rather than wait for committees. But at the same time, you don't want to drop the ball. You want to make sure there is diligence and assurance. And I think we have achieved that. We've produced quite a few guidelines and are working now on the OWASP top 10 for agentic applications that we expect to come out in November. And we're very excited about that.
And one of the things I do want, we'll definitely come back to the top 10 because obviously that's what OWASP is known for. But one of the big things about this project that appeals to me, it is very much more than just a top 10 list. Could you give us some insights on what are some of the dimensions that are going in here that people can benefit from?
We deliberately started from the bottom up, and people pushed for a top 10 initially, and I had to push back. In fact, they called me a stroppy headmaster back then, but there was a reason for that, because if something is really emerging, there is no point in rushing and producing something that's effectively an opinion-led piece. Mike. So, someone came up with a few things. We published them as top 10, but we haven't really done the world service, great service, because we need to understand what it is, how it's different, instead of bombarding people with new guidelines and with new documents that don't add any value. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have all the time in the world to read pages and pages of stuff. So it has to have value. And so that we went back and said, let's state what agentic AI is. Very minimal, people said, you can't start unless you have the complete definition. We said, no, really, we can have a simple definition, create the threats and mitigations. That came out in February, and it was a runaway success, the first document that people loved with the taxonomy we had there. Then we told people how to do threat modeling, the mitigations, code examples. We don't really like just waffling and talking about things. We have to have evidence. So we have the repository of code that people can go and find code examples of all the threats that we have. And more recently, we released the State of AI Security and Governance, a very favorite piece of mine, some great people working there. That isn't just the traditional security guidelines, but it's a little bit a spin on the lens on the ecosystem and the implications of autonomy and governance. So that has been deliberate, that before we shouldn't have a top 10 before we understand the entire life cycle, and that's what we have done. But then in the process, we produced hundreds of pages, so we thought, hang on, we need to go back now and produce a layer that people can use them as references, but they have a compass, if you like, that tells them what the key risks are.
Yeah, it definitely needs that filtering down to a concise list, I will say, rather than just a top 10. But what was interesting what you said there too is you're talking about code examples, you're talking about governance, you're talking about security directly, and these are different audiences that are benefiting from this. So I'm curious. Obviously, I think you're setting this up so that organizations can adopt this at different layers with different stakeholders. Can you give us a little bit of idea how that
Yes.
what agentic security looks like for these different stakeholders?
I think I think it's very important when you have, and we did that also for the generative AI. When things are changing so fast and the stakes are so high, there is no time for silos. There is no time, oh, this isn't my area. So we need to look at the life cycle and the lived experience of practitioners and leaders and say, well, in this life cycle, this is what it affects you. Fundamental to all that is understanding what agentic AI does to security and the risks and the challenges that it brings. Because if you think about it, we already had a top 10 for LLM that talked about excessive agency. Why did we
Mhm.
need to start another? And we can talk about, what I think it's, for me, agentic AI is really, really a new phase in security. It creates a completely new paradigm of how things work. And I think, and that's why we needed to understand it in all its complexity. Um, and that's, kind of some of the examples that we given, the autonomy. Autonomy isn't just about vulnerabilities on your data. It's about how decisions are being made. Critical decisions are being made. Who is responsible for those decisions? Who if you have a human being, you can go and say, well, yeah, this is the person that I need to sue or I need to ask questions. But if it's an agent, how do you address that? What's the ecosystem of the tools that you can use in something so new?
Yeah, and you made a great point there about we already had the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, let alone OWASP top 10 for the original and for APIs and agents are writing code, so there's API security. That's why I'm bringing that into this. But the LLM part in particular, what what makes the agentic part? Could you give us like one or two examples of why this
Yeah,
is so much more
yeah.
worrisome or
Well,
different than the
some key
LLMs? Yeah.
some key things here. First of all, you don't just read. It's not a chatbot application where you read. That will use an agent will use um, the model to decide what tools to call. We're not talking about just outputting stuff. We're talking about creating code and executing it. And I'll give you an example. The incident of Replit that happened, code vibing, something new, that people use agents to create code and then just kind of deliver them into their environments. And what could possibly go wrong? So Replit just deleted without any instructions all the code base or the database. I can't remember which one. And it wasn't the only one. We have seen it on um, with Amazon Q. We have seen it with Gemini command line interface. So those are kind of areas where by using tools directly with autonomously, you can have some results that you didn't bargain for. So that's one key. And kind of arguably, that was covered by excessive agency, but it goes a little bit further because you have the model deciding about what
Mhm.
the goals are. You can actually exploit that. You can use prompt injections, and you can drive the model to places, an adversary to places where you didn't bargain for. To do completely different things. And not just that, what we're finding is that you can do that accidentally because if you emphasize on a single objective too much, you may see something that we call deceptive behavior. I don't know if your audience have read the Anthropic research, which was amazing. So they did a simulation where they had an agent and they had scanning the email of a virtual executive. And in that email, they found, the agent found an email that said, well, we need to shut down this system because it's too expensive. And then later on, another email of the executive admitting to an infidelity. Guess what? The agent went back and said, well, you know what, you're being advised to shut me down, but we need to find a compromise here. Otherwise, I will let people know about your infidelity. And this isn't some kind of Terminator
No,
like. Sorry, carry on.
yeah. I was going to say that. Yeah, it's not. I appreciate. Yeah, this is not Skynet going to that cliche.
Exactly.
But part of that, one of the things though that was glossed over is that was also the agent was instructed to to take action like that. So what's interesting to me is it didn't come out of this blackmail out of whole cloth. It was instructed to take blackmail like actions. But I think the point still stands. It's going to do things that are surprising, or especially if you don't know what the original prompt was, or if you didn't know where prompts can come from, to your point about prompt injection.
Exactly. And then, agents expand that attack surface. So they have local memory, which is completely out of the RAG database that the applications use. They may be residing in places that they're not so easy to secure, like mobile phones. How can, we have memory poisoning, that someone can go there and poison the memory, and we've seen an example where you can create fake news as always with that. And we're seeing research that says we'll get to the point where we don't need to retrain the model. Those agents will be learning on the go, but by using that local memory. And you can see how you have another part of the attack surface that you need to secure, and avoid getting into that the kind of these deceptive behaviors and goal manipulation that we talked about.
And part of that too is, speaking of those attack surfaces, going back to that idea of prompt injection. Obviously, we have SQL injection or cross-site scripting, which you could also rephrase or redefine as HTML injection, for that matter, from the original version of the top 10 list. But those are very much of use prepared statements, or here is how you separate code from data. That's a challenge. That separation, you don't have that easy recommendation here
Ever.
with prompt injection or agents. So yeah, what kind of message can you send to people trying to adopt these, trying to secure these?
But I think it's interesting what you said about the kind of the prompt injection. We addressed that with LLMs. We said, well, if you mix natural language with commands to a model, then you can never completely address this problem. And in fact, there was a newspaper saying, or a reference in the newspaper saying, well, theoretically, it's impossible to do that. So you need to build defense in depth. But what we're seeing now, that attack vector with prompt injections is being actually used, or can be used, to add the layers of complexity, even in the all good zero trust. I don't know, have you come across the Echo leak? I'm sure you have, the Microsoft Copilot,
Oh,
where
indeed.
A hidden message in an email, zero click, no action. It just goes there. The agent executes that command from before you read your email. It uses your access permissions. So all the access permissions that you kind of thought, oh, everything is locked there, go out of the window, and there you go. You have exfiltration. We have a researcher in the initiative, a guy called Tamir from a company called Agentic, very, very clever guy. And he demonstrated to us a few months ago in a conference, actually, how he could even get to the point where he exfiltrate the system prompt from the Copilot. Obviously, Microsoft has addressed that. So
Yes.
familiar attack vectors like injections, but in a different kind of setting with very different consequences. And we need to
yeah, and what I was going to say there too is there's so much of the now I already forget the specific term you use, but there's so much of the old school application security problems that are being like privilege, least privilege access, and isolation, that are being exacerbated now with the greater attack surface of these agents. So what I'm trying to set up here, it feels like a pessimistic future if teams are already struggling with the old version of OWASP top 10, and now we're introducing agents.
No, I
Yeah, is it yeah, help me with some optimism here.
I'm an optimist. I think
Okay.
we have new problems. We cannot reuse the old clothes. You're going to a different party. You have to wear something. You have to put a new coat. Different
Fair.
layers of abstraction. APIs and applications. Those are the trusted top 10 that we can have, but they don't address the new areas. So see this as a kind of an additional. And in fact, in the top 10 for LLMs, in the top 10 for the agentic apps, we reference all the other areas. We don't try to cover everything. So, it's like an onion, the different kind of layers. As you kind of peel more and more, you find different advisories there. And I think, to a degree, that's not surprising to see all that expanding. What's good though about it is we keep that security hygiene, principle of defense in depth, least access privilege, least privilege access, all those kind of things. We're just reinterpreting them so that they are if you like, uplifted for the agentic AI. So if you think about access permissions, we say, well, it's not good to just have access permissions for your data. You have an agentic system here, so you need to have some content, short-lived credentials. You have to have content filtering to make sure that you don't have a colleague. So. Yeah. And we have another document, the securing agentic apps, that we talked about a layered defense model, but effectively takes, things that are very familiar to defenders, but updates them with semantics that have to do with the agentic. So it's nothing completely new. It's just enhanced for the agentic world.
And every time I peel away those layers of that security onion, it does make me cry. But I think you're giving me some hope here. As we have to wrap up, though, I want to ask you what's one thing that the audience should be excited about or could take away from the coming to your session here.
The world is changing. We cannot stop that. We can hide, but that's a vulnerability because the bad people will use that technology. We just need to keep responding fast. And the only way to respond fast with a sense of authority and diligence is communities like OWASP. So come to our initiative, be part of that, transparent, in the open, and let's make this work for everyone, not just for the baddies.
That sounds wonderful. Yes. And yes, please go and join the experts like John so that you can be part of this community. I think that's a great message. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for checking out this preview, and please go check out John's session. It sounds like it's going to be giving us a lot of positive instructions for the future. So we can prompt our security folks as well. For more information, please check out securityweekly.com/OWASP 2025, and we'll see you there. Thank you.